Sports with Sean Caravilles.
So the Tour de France is back on Tuesday after rest day, and what a dramatic day we had on Sunday. Here's BBC 5 Live.
The Tour de France.
Hello, I'm OJ Borge and welcome to Bespoke at the Tour de France. My current location, I'm sat by a beautiful lake. There's kids playing in the water, there's people fishing, it's calm, it's peaceful. Up behind me though, they are the slopes of Mont de Chat, the final descent of today's stage 9 of the Tour de France. We drove them earlier on, they were twisty, they were technical, they were wet, and quite frankly, they were terrifying. And today, they were the scene of untold drama.
It's like to be further. Oh, there's a crash here. There's a crash. It looks like it might be Dan Martin and Richie Porte, perhaps. If that's the front group, that's what it might be. We only had the quickest of looks, and now the cameraman has gone back towards the front of the race.
Yeah, it certainly looked like Porte and Dan Martin had taken themselves out, unfortunately, on one of the bends, and this is what we've just spoken about. You know, you just cannot take your eye off the ball.
Here it is again now as they took a left-hander. Richie Porte misjudged it. He crashed down into the road and brought Dan Martin down with him as well. Martin not falling as heavily. It was Porte as they swooped into a left-hander who completely came off the road on the inside and crashed because he was riding on the dirt. Richie Porte's on the ground, and I think Richie Porte is out of the Tour de France because he's not moving at all. He's being attended to by medical staff. Dan Martin has got a replacement wheel. He's back on his bike. Martin is okay. He is continuing, but I fear Richie Porte may not be able to continue in the Tour de France.
And that was just a soupçon of the drama that happened today on stage 9 of the Tour de France. I'm alongside Rob Hale, Simon Brotherton. We're beside the lac, which you found so funny when I said it earlier on. The lake here in Aix-les-Bains, just down from Mont de Chat, which is just up to the right-hand side, where all of that happened. And Simon, before we even get on to who won today's stage,
I was about to say this is the calm after the storm, but I'm not too sure now. The wind's kicking up quite a lot here.
It was a horrendous crash, and he got it wrong slightly on one corner.
Well, I'd have been very happy to have been completely wrong there, saying that I thought he was going to be out of the Tour, but you usually get a pretty good idea when a rider hits the deck, and there didn't seem to be any way that he was going to get up from that. It just looked as if he misjudged it. Dan Martin was speaking afterwards, saying that that it was very, very slippery on the descent, and it was dangerous, and that Richie Porte's back wheel had locked up. I wouldn't mind seeing it again, actually, because it just looked at the time as if he slightly misjudged it. But of course, as soon as he come off the new freshly tarmacked road, he was onto soft dirt, and that's effectively what catapulted him from the left-hand side of the road across to the other side. And it was just a horrible collision with the bank, effectively the wall on the right-hand side of the road. And Dan Martin had got time to I think he had time to put his brakes on a bit to slow down enough so that the impact wasn't as bad as it might have been. He did fall, but he was able to pick himself up and still finish strongly in 6th place overall he is now.
It was one of those crashes, when you see it, you fear for the worst.
You do, unfortunately, because he came off on the left-hand side, off in the dirt. It catapulted him across the road, and unfortunately the road was going round to the left, and it was just a wall of rock. And that's basically what stopped him. You know, there was no runoff at all. There was no grassy bank, no grassy verge on the right-hand side of the road. And he kind of spun round and he hit that with basically between his shoulder blades, unfortunately. Dan Martin kind of hit him, but in a slightly different trajectory, so he didn't hit it quite so hard. Yeah, it didn't look good, but fortunately from our point of view, we could see that he was speaking, he was conscious, so hopefully he will be fine. Obviously they stretchered him off in a neck brace, which is the normal way, just as a precaution.
It's terrible for him, obviously. You know, we hope that he's not seriously hurt. We hope that it was mostly precautionary. I'd be amazed if he hasn't broken something though with a fall as bad as that. But what a great loss to the Tour de France as well, though. I mean, you know, when you look at the results this year that he's had and you compare them to everyone else's, he was the number one challenger to Chris Froome, bar none. So it's a big deal that the Tour has lost Richie Porte, and it's a great shame with so long to go to Paris.
He was looking so good as well today, looked in control, took control of a few situations out on the road. and then that happens on the final descent. It's what we expected, not necessarily in terms of the riders, but we knew that the two descents coming into the finish were going to be, or could very well be, have an effect on the race, on general classification. I don't think we were expecting, and we certainly wouldn't have wanted it to have been this dramatic in this way.
You want drama, you want excitement. You don't want somebody hurt.
No, you want the best people going head to head, so you get a true and worthy winner. And unfortunately, Richie Porte is going to play no further part in the Tour. It was such a dramatic day today. He wasn't the only rider towards the top of the general classification to go. We lost 2 of this morning's top 5 because long before Richie Porte crashed out, Geraint Thomas did. That was on the descent of the Col de la Biche, which was the first of the 3 or category or beyond category climbs today, and he left the race in an ambulance too, with what has been confirmed by Team Sky as a fractured collarbone.
And this is Geraint Thomas, who wore the yellow jersey for the first few stages. He was sat second overall. He is the key lieutenant to Chris Froome.
The key lieutenant.
That is a real loss to Team Sky.
Hugely so, yes, the key lieutenant. It's a lot of firepower that Chris Froome has obviously lost, but he was also the plan B, or Plan G as he has been kind of nicknamed, just in case there is an issue with Chris Froome at some point. The longer they could have kept Geraint Thomas up, he was 12 seconds behind in second place going into today. That has all gone, unfortunately. So yeah, a huge blow to the race, to Team Sky, to everyone.
I think you're right, Rob. The biggest thing with Geraint going out of the race is the fact that he was their plan B. If there was a problem for Chris Froome, he was going to be the person they would look to. In terms of Chris Froome, obviously when you lose a rider of Geraint Thomas's ability, it's a big blow. But on the positive side, Mikhail Kwiatkowski is riding superbly, and then on the key climb, on the Mont du Chat climb at the end, he'd still got Mikel Landa was there, Sergio Henao.
So they've still got a strong team.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys who are going to be with him on the climbs towards the end, at the decisive part of the stages, most of them seem to be riding strongly, and they're still there.
And Luke Rowe seems to be coming round a little bit as well. He had a crash a few days ago, had a little bit of a wobble a couple of days ago where he lost time early on, yesterday in fact, and I think he's feeling a little bit better. Obviously we go into a rest day tomorrow, which will help them. Then we've got 2 days predominantly sprint stages, so at least from their point of view, yes, they're a man down, but it gives them a few more days of extra recovery.
Now, you can watch this, because this does go out live on the 5 Live Facebook page and the 5 Live website as well. Of course, you can experience it. Maybe you are as a podcast, in which case, please do subscribe and leave us a comment. And if you want to get in touch, either at 5 Live Sport, #BBC Cycling, or if you are watching it live, then please do get in touch. Operators standing by. The operator today is me, and I'm looking at a message from Jason Tapping saying today is really not the Tour. First Cav and Sagan, obviously for different reasons. Now G and Porte, he says. Was today too dangerous? All we've talking about leading up to this, I actually drove down that descent and it was terrifying coming down in a van. Was it too dangerous?
Is it too dangerous for the Tour? It's bike racing. We've seen it a lot. It could have been worse had the weather changed. I think the thing that really made the difference was the moisture, and that's what Dan Martin was saying, that it's very slippy under the tyres. At what point do you say, okay, we're not going to use these roads, we're going to use these big open roads straight? The run-in today was hairy, really was. It's bike racing, that's what they deal with, but it just goes to show how the sport of cycling takes no prisoners. You make one very small move in the wrong direction, like Richie Porte did, just going into an open bend just slightly too quick, just off the racing line. He went to brake, no traction under him, bang, he's out.
It's brutally unforgiving, isn't it?
To put it into context, the at Le Tour data, which is a great source of finding out what's happened in the day with statistics, the rest of it, they tweeted out that Richie Porte was going at 72.5 kilometres an hour when he suffered that crash. It's such a speed.
And he stopped.
And then he stopped at that speed. Talking of safety, Dan Martin, who was involved in that crash because Richie Porte banged into him, he did say, he was quoted as he was interviewed on TV, saying that the Tour organisers, they got what they wanted.
Yeah, I think maybe speaking to him perhaps straight after the stage, in the heat of the moment, he would be, angry and frustrated about the danger that he felt he was in, perhaps. But as Rob was suggesting, any of these mountain stages, any of the mountain descents, when the road is partly dry and partly wet, will be dangerous. They're as dangerous as you make them, but the speed you're trying to go on them. As for the climb itself, as an all category climb, interestingly, this is the 104th edition of the race. It's the first time this one has ever featured, so it doesn't have a history in the race before today. So
Mondachat,
yeah,
which Rob Hales will now translate into English from French.
Cat Mountain.
Cat Mountain, indeed it is. We've looked up on the internet to try and work out what's called Cat Mountain. We can't work it out. Absolutely no idea. We've had a message coming, actually, comes in from, I've lost it now, saying Peter Martin, he's talking about Dan Martin. We don't think there's a connection there or a relation. He says he is one tough guy. From the state of his helmet after he crashed, he got a new wheel, carried on and made it down. Didn't lose that much time in the end.
No, he finished pretty well, actually. Only 1:15 down, I think, off the top of my head. It was a really gutsy ride. He was lucky to be able to pick himself up off the floor quickly after that incident with Richie Porte. But he got back on, gutsy, tough, and up to that point he'd been right up there. He lost a little bit of ground, didn't he, towards the top of Mondachat, but he was hanging in there with Froome and the rest of the riders up at the top, and so it was another really good day for Dan Martin. That little crash aside, and also Simon Yates rode strongly too. Simon Yates is still 7th overall. He lost a little bit of ground today, but not too much.
Before we actually get to who won the stage, because it was an exciting end to the stage as well.
Photo finish after all that.
Indeed, again, I tell you, there's something great about watching climbers sprint, isn't there?
Especially when their gears are stuck in the...
Yeah, in the first gear, which we'll talk about him in a second, because it was fabulous. Henri de Grange would love the fact that a person with only one gear managed to win the race. Chris Froome had a mechanical going up. Fabio Aru attacked at that moment.
He did,
as an
indeed.
ex-bike rider, what do you think of that move?
Put it this way, he won't be doing it again, and I don't think anybody, let alone Team Sky, but anybody is going to give him kind of the benefit of the doubt anymore. That was an extreme error of judgment. Whether afterwards, especially when it came back and it came to nothing and nobody else would ride with him, whether he thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or maybe he just thought, oh, well, that didn't work, I'll have another go next time. But yeah, as soon as Chris Froome's hand went up in the air, he looked back for the team car, Aru went. Basically, if you can't go when they haven't got a problem, then don't go when they have got a problem. That's basically what it is, and it's a no-no. And it's a racing situation, I know, but it's a no-no. And you could see the way everybody else, Quintana, Porte, they followed, because you have to follow, but as soon as he swung over, they just looked and went, no, and they shut the race down.
So just on that point then, now of course the crash happened with Richie Porte and Dan Martin. Rigoberto Urán's bike was damaged in that crash. It was a crash that happened. Do you think that group should have sat up and waited for Urán to be able to change his bike, to fix his bike, because he got stuck in one gear?
He couldn't. He didn't have a team car.
Totally different situation.
Totally different situation, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. The thing was, it was that far out. It wasn't like, had Chris Froome had a problem in the final few kilometres,
then it's fine.
Then it's pretty much fine. But it was, the thing was, it was actively, I'm attacking when somebody is down, and there are always going to be people who say, well, fair game. But if social media and is anything to go by, you look at what happened, it's not a popular move.
And I think Richie Porte took control of the situation there, didn't he? Once they caught up with Fabio Aru, I got the impression, and certainly Chris Froome said, that he thinks that Richie Porte just said, hey, hang on guys, this isn't really the time to be doing this. And you could sense from the body language of Aru, he looked really frustrated, because he knew it was quite clear that none of the others were prepared to take it on with him at the front.
There are a lot of pro bike riders, current and ex, who have gone, no.
Just on that point then, during the Giro, Tom Dumoulin had a stomach problem, had to stop for a Dumoulin. Nairo Quintana and his team attacked at that moment. Now, he had a mechanical breakdown of the body, he had to stop by the side of the road, he had to go because he had the stomach cramps. Was it right for Nairo Quintana to attack then, in the same way that it wasn't today for Aru to attack because Froome had a problem with his bike?
Probably not the right thing to do. The thing was, Dumoulin dealt with it extremely well and came back and ultimately won, and I think there are a lot of people who were actually more happy that Dumoulin ended up winning than Nairo Quintana, and that would have been one of the reasons. Yeah, certainly.
It's interesting, and it's like, ultimately it it's hard to know where they draw the line, isn't it, OJ, on these sort of things? And let's be honest, for all the gentlemen's agreements that there are, which are sometimes broken, quite clearly the last few years have proven time and time again that in other ways they're more than happy to cheat each other out of the results.
I think there's a difference. If the racing is on, and Chris Froome had the problem today, that's one thing. But Chris Froome had the problem and Aru attacked. There's a completely different thing. It's
all context.
It was a reaction to Froome suddenly having a problem. He thought, oh great, he's got a problem here, I'll go now.
Had Chris Froome been pedalling away fine with no problems, there is no way Aru would have attacked at that point. He just wouldn't have done it.
I promise we'll get to the finish in a second, actually talk about who won the stage. Just a couple more messages that are coming in now. Robert Hudson, why did Astana work with Froome to chase down Bardet? Let Froome chase him down and then attack him.
The problem was Bardet was gaining on Fabio Aru. Aru has got to look out for... He's got an eye, obviously, on the yellow jersey, but he has also got to look out for Bardet coming from behind. Chris Froome was, he was also chasing. Everybody in that group had something to gain. The thing was, Astana, they didn't know what they were doing at the end. It came to the sprint finish. There were time bonuses on offer. Fuglsang attacked, left Aru out the back. Why didn't they ride together? Well, they're non-sprinters trying to sprint. That's part of the problem. But I just sense that there might be a little bit of infighting between those two. Because the first thing you would have done, you would have got Aru on your wheel. Whether he could have out-sprinted Chris Froome anyway, even with the lead out, you at least try. You don't send your teammate who is desperate for time bonuses. You don't send him out the back while you're trying to go for a stage win that ultimately neither of you get anything from. Chris Froome ends up crossing the line, picks up 4 time bonus seconds, and has advanced his lead by a further 4 seconds from Aru.
They played it badly in the sprint, didn't they?
They were horrendous out there.
But when they started the chase and they were all working hard together, Bardet at that point was 25-30 seconds in front, and of course Aru's had that sort of gap advantage in the overall standings over Bardet. He doesn't want to leave the door open to Bardet because he'll walk straight through it.
I mean, the thing is as well, you get to that late in the race and they're just kind of fighting for themselves anyway, but they certainly didn't do themselves any favours, even under the duress and the fatigue of a day like that.
But what a sprint it was, though.
What a sprint it was. We're talking about it. Neil Chapman says so many twists and turns today, best stage in a long time. We're talking about this chase, we're talking about this sprint finish between these GC contenders. Let's pick up the commentary with Simon Brotherton.
Bardet's in third place, Uran still second, Froome in fourth, Barguil 3, and Uran is pushing hard. This is a great ride from Rigoberto Uran. Bardet and Uran going for the line, and now here comes Warren Barguil in the end. Barguil's in there, and Barguil and Uran neck and neck as they cross the line. Barguil raises his arm in the air. Did he snatch it?
And it was a photo finish. It's actually Rigoberto Uran who takes the stage.
By the width of a tyre, it's Uran who will get the stage win. Well, Barguil thought that he got it, clearly. But the photo finish suggests that it is Rigoberto Uran who gets the stage win.
And it was a great sprint as well. Now, Rigoberto Uran, somebody who had lots of promise a few years ago, seems to be maybe the dark horse of this year's Tour de France.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. He's 30 years of age now, the Colombian Uran. Used to ride for Sky, so he was a teammate of Froome. And you're right, a few years ago, there was the wonder as to whether he would be able to really push in the general classifications. He has twice finished second overall in the Giro in Italy, and he went to Cannondale from Sky because he wanted that team leadership role, and up to now it hasn't really worked out for him. Nobody's been talking about him before the Tour, or indeed up to today, but he rode really, really strongly, and listeners and viewers may remember Uran back in the UK. He came second in the Olympic Games in the road race in London in 2012 when Vinokurov beat him to the line.
Beat him in a sprint, but he got one back.
First stage win in the Tour for him today, though.
And he was stuck in one gear. Just explain what that sprint would have been like for him at that moment, because it was a big gear he was stuck in.
It will be one of those sprints where I think, having seen what happened and the outcome, he will be glad that it happened in terms of the mechanical that he had off the back. And I'm fairly sure that he must have clipped Dan Martin in the Richie Porte crash, and Dan Martin clipped his gears, and basically it twisted his rear derailleur, which changes your gears on the back, and it wasn't working, and so he basically had 2 gears. small chainring and big chainring on the front. So there was a huge disparity between the two gears that he had. Now he went back to the Mavic neutral service vehicle and basically got the mechanic to hang out and pull the whole thing across, because it would have been jumping about. He had got it to pull it across into the 11, so he was basically stuck in top gear for the sprint. Now there were shots of when it was kind of going slightly uphill. Chris Froome was sat in the saddle, pedaling like a spider, like he does, knees out everywhere, spinning really quickly, and Geraint was sat in the saddle, just really stamping on the pedals, just churning it away. But actually, when it came down to the sprint, he had to commit to it, and I think had his gears been working normally, he probably wouldn't have won. But it was the fact that he was in a top gear, and sometimes you can be a little bit of a brave manoeuvre to go slightly over geared. I think it worked for him. Put it this way: he won. He won't be bothered.
But he didn't know he'd won, did he?
No, he didn't. Well, he didn't know.
He waved his arm in the air, thought he'd won, and tears of joy. Another great French victory. And then about 5 minutes later, it emerged that quite clearly, unlike the other day, where you couldn't tell the difference between Boasson-Hagen and Kittel. When you look at the photo finish, I mean, it was a whole tyres width, which is like a mile compared to the photo finish the other day. And poor old Bargill, there were different kinds of tears. I think.
Yeah, he was still crying, slightly different ones. Yeah. Meanwhile, Rigoberto Urán was jumping for joy.
He was indeed.
And rightly so.
Rigoberto Urán not getting served in any French bar for a few days.
Yeah, and he's up to fourth though in the Tour now overall.
137 down.
Yeah, I was just looking at the overall standings. Chris Froome, of course, retains the yellow jersey. Fabio Aru is still in second, 18 seconds down. Romain Bardet, he now has the polka dot jersey, 51 seconds down. Rigoberto Urán is 55 seconds down. And if we're mentioning Chris Froome, who had not an easy day, but he gets through it wearing the yellow jersey, he was speaking to Gemma Sturber.
Chris, what a dramatic stage.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get more full on than that. I mean, we had everything today. A massive day of climbing, over 4,000 meters, with pretty tough conditions as well. Wet descents, dangerous descents. Of course, I mean, I'm still happy to have the yellow jersey on my shoulders, but really mixed emotions. Having Geraint Thomas crash out with a broken collarbone, that's a big blow to the team. We're really going to miss G, and he was right up there on GC in second place. So, that's a big hit for us. And then secondly, also Richie Porte, the way he crashed on the last descent was just leaves you with a horrible feeling. So I just hope he's not too seriously injured, and I hope he makes a speedy recovery.
It was described in commentary as an amateur move from a true professional when Aru tried to make a break when you had that technical. Is that fair?
I didn't actually see that. I was too busy trying to change my bike at that moment and looking for my team car to see where the spare bike was. But that group did ease up in front, and I think that was again thanks to Richie. I think Richie said to the other guys, "Listen, guys, this isn't the moment to attack. What are you doing?" And I just want to say thank you to that group and thank you to Richie, because I don't believe that is the way to race at the Tour de France, to take advantage of someone's bad luck like that. But yeah, again, just want to say thank you to that group for not really taking advantage of that moment.
A very diplomatic Chris Froome, though, who says he didn't see it and then talks about it in great detail. Length, just to point out, if you are listening to this on the podcast and you can hear a wind blowing, it's because we sat down and immediately a very strong wind is coming up this lac here in Aix-les-Bains.
Yeah, there's not a lot of protection behind us from the flat lake, the water across. You can see into the distance. All I can see is the wind coming towards us.
Straight into our eyeballs. Lots of people are commenting, saying, Daryl says, brilliant stage, had everything. I hope all the riders who crashed are okay. Paul Lang-Standall says, Froome's got his work cut out now. Think he's on his own from now on. Lots to do. Do you think he's on his own, really?
No, I don't think he is. No, I think Kwiatkowski did really well, as I said earlier. I think Henao, Landa and Nieve were with him for a long time today. I mean, Quintana was the one who looked to be on his own, actually, in that group. Even when there were about 30 of them.
He was on his own
in the yellow jersey group. Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, but he certainly didn't have any teammates with him. So, no, I think at the moment it's a big blow losing Geraint Thomas. We won't underestimate that, but Froome has still got some very handy teammates with him.
Well, it is a rest day tomorrow, so everyone takes a break. Some people are taking a longer break. We've got time cuts. Some people are going home. We talked about it yesterday. We said it doesn't ever really happen, and there's a load of them. Arnaud Démare is one of them.
Well, it was we were doing all our post-race material, our two-ways, our chats, recording various bits and bobs. And then we were packing up the kit and getting ready to leave. And just as we were doing so, I heard some cheering in the street. Looked outside the commentary window to see poor old Arnaud Démare with a couple of his teammates and a couple of others coming across the line. 58 minutes and 46 seconds, I think he was, after the stage winner. He looked as white as a sheet when he crossed the line. I'm not surprised. Well, but fair play to him for keeping going, although he's going to be out now and two of his teammates will go with him.
Three of his teammates.
Well, I think it's four FDJ riders. For a French team to lose 4 riders, that's...
So they're a five-a-side team now.
Yeah, a slight error of judgment, I think, on behalf of the team there. Yesterday they sent teammates back for him. Today they did the same. The problem is you get to a point where you realise that it's too late, and you can't. It is too late for everybody.
They should have known earlier, shouldn't they? Because that's he lost 37.5 minutes yesterday on a stage where he wouldn't have expected that to happen. He finished and said, fair play to him for finishing, but he said, I don't really know what's the matter. I'm just completely empty. The same two guys, Delage and Konovalovas, were with him at the start today, and I distinctly remember after about 10 minutes today, he was 5 minutes behind. He was losing time hand over fist right from the word go today. I think maybe they should have cut their losses there, because it was obvious he wasn't going to get through it.
Well, today's stage had everything in it, didn't it? James, who's just messaged, says, was it the most exciting stage you can remember?
No, but don't ask me to name the most exciting, but it was certainly full of action. Some of it the wrong action, certainly, but it always had the potential for being a great stage, and I think it certainly was. But not the greatest. But please don't ask me to.
Same. No, I agree. But it was, for me, it was mostly memorable for the wrong reasons. Actually, it was mostly memorable, of course, because it was the day that Richie Porte was crashed out of the Tour.
That's why it doesn't make it. It was exciting at some times for the wrong reasons. Stuart says it was just a great day of racing, which pretty much brings us to the end. The wind is blowing. It looks like rain's coming in. Our kit's outside. Everything will start breaking. So let us wrap it up here. Chris Froome stays in the yellow jersey, but he's now without his key lieutenant. Tomorrow is a day off.
Laundry.
Praise me for a day off. Although we have to do a 6-hour drive and then go to some press conferences, which is the worst reason ever to do a 6-hour drive. Thank you very much to Rob Hales, to Simon Brotherton.
Sports with Sean Caravilles.